East Prussia, July 20th, 1944. The war is turning against Germany. In a forest fortress called the Wolf's Lair, Adolf Hitler meets his generals for a midday briefing. On the floor beside him sits a leather briefcase packed with 2 pounds of high explosive. Inside the room are 24 men. Only one knows what's about to happen. At 12:42 p.m., the timer runs out. The explosion tears the room apart. 4 officers die instantly. And yet, Hitler walks out of the wreckage alive. That blast was meant to end the war, topple the Nazi regime, and rewrite Europe. Instead, it missed by inches. By the summer of 1944, the war Hitler had unleashed was collapsing around him. In the east, Soviet forces were crushing Army Group Center. In the west, Allied troops had stormed ashore in Normandy. Inside Germany, air raid sirens and rubble defined daily life. Many officers could see the truth. The war was lost, but for most, obedience had become instinct. Only a small circle believed the only way to save Germany, and any shred of honor, was to remove Hitler himself. These were not students or exiles. They were generals, colonels, diplomats, men inside the system. They met in whispers, traded coded messages, and built their hope around one word: Valkyrie. Originally, Operation Valkyrie was a legal emergency plan, an order to deploy the reserve army if civil unrest broke out. The conspirators planned to twist it into a coup. Once Hitler was dead, Valkyrie would mobilize troops, secure Berlin, arrest the Nazi leadership, and announce a new government. But first, someone had to plant the bomb. The man chosen for that job was Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg. An aristocrat, career officer, and staff veteran of the North African campaign, he'd lost his right hand, 2 fingers of the left, and an eye to an air attack in 1943. He believed Germany's survival demanded Hitler's death and accepted that he might die with him. Stauffenberg became both courier and assassin. His position on the Reserve Army staff gave him direct access to Hitler's briefings at the Wolf's Lair, the Führer's heavily guarded headquarters. He carried in a plain leather briefcase and, hidden inside, a British-made plastic explosive block with a chemical delay detonator. On the morning of July 20th, he boarded a plane from Berlin, bomb components in his uniform bag. He was scheduled to brief Hitler at 12:30 p.m. If all went to plan, the Führer would be dead within an hour, and the coup in Berlin would begin before sunset. The idea didn't start as murder. Valkyrie was a bureaucratic lifeline, a legal plan the army had written to keep order if Berlin collapsed into chaos. Reserve units, emergency controls, clear chains of command to prevent looting and panic. It existed on paper and in the drawers of the general staff, innocent and dry. Conspirators saw a different use. They could flip the procedure. If Hitler were dead, Valkyrie could mobilize the reserve army under the pretext of crushing uprisings, and instead use that power to seize key buildings, communications, and the government itself. The architects were professionals, men like Friedrich Olbricht, Ludwig Beck, and others who believed the army could reclaim Germany from the party. They rewrote memos, planted fake threats on paper, and rehearsed orders until the muscle memory matched the form. This was not a street uprising. It was legal theater harnessed to assassination. Kill the Führer, trigger Valkyrie, and use the law against the regime. That was the plan in its cold engineering form, elegant, precise, and fragile. It depended on timing, on counting on officers across the country to believe a single message: that the Führer was dead. July 20th began with ritual, briefings, maps, the shuffle of aides. Stauffenberg had already been to the Wolf's Lair before, only this time he carried a plain leather briefcase that hid the instrument of everything he'd chosen to risk. There were small, fatal changes in routine. The Führer's underground concrete bunker was unbearably hot that week, so the meeting was relocated to a wooden conference cabin, thinner walls, skylights, more windows. The room's lighter construction would prove to be mercy for some and misfortune for others. Stauffenberg waited for a pause in the discussion. He set the briefcase on the floor near the table, adjusted the chemical time detonator, and prepared to leave. He had with him 2 explosive charges, an insurance plan, but time conspired against him. He managed to arm one. The second remained unprimed. Before he left, someone moved the briefcase. Lieutenant Heinz Brandt stepped forward to reposition a map cabinet, an instinct that would change everything. The case found itself behind a heavy oak table leg, not in the open aisle where its destructive force would have been maximal. Stauffenberg slipped away, the same determined calm in his step that gets men through impossible decisions. He boarded a plane for Berlin, clutching the knowledge that in a matter of minutes the world might be different. At 12:42 p.m., the bomb went off. The cabin burst into fire. The blast killed and wounded several officers, but the physical geometry of the room and one small human motion had done their work. The heavy table legs shielded Hitler from the full blast. Splinters and shrapnel raked him, and he sustained burns and damage to his hearing, but he was alive. Those first terrified moments were a tangle of rumor. Stauffenberg, hours away in a plane, radioed a message back to Berlin. The Führer is dead. Orders were sent under Valkyrie's name. Command posts reacted on the assumption that the heart of Germany had stopped. Back at the Wolf's Lair, however, eyes and telephones told a different story. Reports contradicted one another. Some officers swore they had seen Hitler fall. Others heard him speaking on the radio. The physical survival of one man began to unravel the neat machine the conspirators had built. In the space of an hour, the coup went from surgical to sloppy. The reserve army began to move, but hesitation, competing commands, and the loyalty of vital commanders to the Nazi chain of command created a chaos the conspirators had underestimated. The most decisive fact of the day was not the blast itself, but what it did to the simplest thing a coup needs: belief. When Stauffenberg's aircraft landed in Berlin that afternoon, he believed Hitler was dead. He and his aide, Werner von Haeften, drove straight to the Bendler Block, headquarters of the Reserve Army. From there, General Friedrich Olbricht began sending out Operation Valkyrie orders, claiming the SS had staged a coup and that the Reserve Army was taking control. For several hours, the system worked. Units in Paris, Vienna, and parts of Berlin acted on the assumption that Hitler was gone, but confirmation never came. At Wolfschanze, Hitler had already met with officers and dictated proof of life. Phone calls to Goebbels, Himmler, and Keitel. A few hours later, a radio broadcast carried his voice to the nation. By early evening, loyal officers in Berlin realized the truth. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel called directly to the Bendler Block. Major Otto Rehmer, commanding security troops in the capital, received orders from Goebbels to speak with Hitler personally by telephone. After hearing the Führer's voice, Rehmer switched sides and surrounded the conspirators' headquarters. The coup collapsed before midnight. Inside the Bendler Block, the conspirators debated surrender. General Ludwig Beck attempted taking his own life. When he failed, a soldier ended it for him. Shortly before 1 a.m. on July 21st, Klaus von Stauffenberg, Werner von Haeften, Friedrich Olbricht, and Albrecht Merz von Kirnheim were taken into the courtyard. They were executed by firing squad under the glare of headlights. By dawn, their coup was history. In the following days, the Gestapo arrested thousands. More than 7,000 people were implicated. Roughly 4,980 were executed over the next months. Many were tried in the People's Court, where Judge Roland Freisler turned proceedings into public humiliation before sentencing the accused to hang on piano wire hooks at Plötzensee prison. Hitler used the failed attempt as proof of destiny. That night, he addressed Germany by radio, boasting that Providence had spared him and promising ruthless revenge. Photographs of his torn trousers and burned jacket were released as propaganda, evidence the regime said that no weapon could harm him. Within days, he replaced the entire personal security system, created new loyalty oaths, and intensified repression. The Wehrmacht's remaining independence vanished. The SS grew even stronger. Far from loosening Nazi control, the July 20th plot tightened it.